Hi, mis amigos. Happy Saturday. Happy summer. I hope you guys are doing amazing. I hope your summer has been going well. It's been a little while since I've done one of my webinars, my Freedom Playa Real Estate webinars, but I have been wanting for a while to do a webinar about property management in Playa del Carmen and the Riviera Maya. Those of you who may already be property owners here, or if you're considering buying a property in this area, there are some important things you need to know. Earlier this year, actually as of last year, I started helping some of my clients with property management, and I learned a few important things as a result. So I would like to share that with you today. Okay, and I prepared a few slides for you. It's not going to be a long webinar. I'm going to be covering the essentials, what you need to know, my friends, because there are some differences between owning a property here versus up north somewhere. Okay, give me 1 second to share my screen. And greetings to those of you who may be watching this live. Greetings to those of you who will be watching this after the fact. I'm going to go onto slideshow. So I titled this property management in Playa del Carmen and the Riviera Maya. There are some important things you need to consider, my friends. And we're going to start with the first important things: humidity and salinity. We are very close to the water, my friends, and as a result, there are some effects to do with that. And I'll give you an example. I had friends who have left town for a couple of months, maybe to visit back home, Canada, the US, and they forgot about the ventilation. And they came home after 2 months and they found all their stuff covered in mold. The curtains, the cushions, all their clothes, and some of that mold doesn't come off so easily. It will literally ruin your clothes and your furniture. Ventilation is super important. One of the things you may want to do if you are an owner that is maybe personally occupying the unit, or to whatever extent your unit will be vacant, if you're not going to be in your apartment and if you don't have a person physically going in, at least every few days to turn on the AC, then I'll tell you, there are some devices, and there's actually a Canadian company that one of my clients recommended to me. And I'm going to see if you guys can see the screen. It's called Sensibo. This is one of the options. They're not the only provider. I think Logitech. There are other providers that make this remote control devices. They attach to your mini split ACs. Most of the air conditioning systems in Playa are mini splits, those wall units. So that way you can turn on your AC from a distance, put it on dry mode, which is one of the features the ACs have. And that way, my friends, you're not going to be returning to all your stuff covered in mold. Okay, let me go back to my slides. Now I don't know where my slides are. Dios mío. Okay, where are they? Oh, what did I do? I lost my slides. Oh, geez. All right, bear with me for a second. Here? Yes, here. Okay. So let's talk about air conditioning units. So I mentioned to you ventilation. Another thing, pardon me, here I didn't put it in the slides, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to invest in dehumidifiers. There are some large size dehumidifiers that you can buy here locally at the Costco. We don't have a Costco in Playa del Carmen, but there's one in Cancun, and we do have a Home Depot in Playa del Carmen. So Home Depot does sell dehumidifiers as well. They're not very expensive. You're looking at about, actually, like a few hundred, I don't know, but your property is worth more than that. So if you're gonna not be in your property, or if you'll be vacant for any point, for any length of time, good idea to install some dehumidifiers. They can be installed so that they drain into the shower. So yeah, pretty amazing. I would do that if I were a property owner in this area, especially, again, if the property is owner occupied, or to the extent that it's going to be vacant. Important to keep things dry, mis amigos, okay? I'll talk to you about the salinity shortly. So speaking about air conditioning units, the majority of the ACs, I know in places like Canada, we're used to having central AC. Central AC is very uncommon here, at least for residential properties. I'm guessing for commercial properties, I haven't looked that closely. But for residential properties, I would say 95% of the buildings will have these mini split systems. And the mini splits have the internal unit, and then they have, for those of you who haven't lived in a country that has mini splits, they have a compressor that is usually located on the outside of the building, oftentimes on the rooftop of the building, perhaps on your balcony. Now, here's where the salinity, and both the humidity and the salinity, will affect the life of the compressor. So to the extent that it's exposed to the elements, that will wear it down over time. And the average lifespan of these units is 5 to 7 years. The closer you are to the ocean, to the water, the faster you can expect your AC units to stop working. Now, it says here, rarely you can come across multi-split type units. I've only had this happen to me once, and it just happened to be in one of the units that I'm managing for one of my clients, where all of a sudden, after an electric failure in the building, but we don't know if it had anything to do with that, but all of a sudden, both of the ACs in her units, it's a one-bedroom unit, both of the ACs were not working. Come to find out, both of the ACs were controlled by the same compressor located, on the outside of the building. And, I had two AC technicians come in. They both diagnosed that the compressor had basically lived its useful life and it needed to be replaced. And essentially, for my poor client, she had to replace. It was twice the cost. It was whereas if it had been an individual mini split unit, which each unit had its own compressor, it would have maybe only one of them would have failed. So if you can avoid it, don't install this multi-split unit because of what I just explained. If once the compressor is gone, all the ACs are gone. So these clients, the unit was tenanted at the time. The tenants were quite patient, but their patience was wearing thin while we were trying to figure out, what to do. And we ended up having to install two separate mini splits. And that way, if one of them fails, at least the tenants will have some AC in the unit. So now in this case, this was a resale condo that my client has purchased. Keeping in mind the useful life of the ACs, if you are buying a resale property that was built, 5 to 7 years ago or even longer, find out if the ACs were replaced by the original owner, when they were replaced, because that way you have an idea of what you can expect. Oftentimes, as you're walking in a unit, you're going to see, you can kind of tell if the AC is older because it's plastic, and normally that plastic is white. This mini split unit, if you start seeing the plastic turn yellowish, then you know it's close to its useful life, and you may want to just plan for the expense. They're not overly expensive, but again, you're looking at about the replacement cost for each unit, including labor, was about 15,000 pesos each, so 750. Again, it's not pleasant to have to do any maintenance on your property, so it's a good idea to keep in mind this maintenance cost and plan for it, especially if your ACs are nearing their useful life. Okay. Also, what you want to do, my friends, is you want to be doing maintenance on your air conditioning units every 6 months, especially if your units are being used. Now, if the unit has been vacant and you're only turning them on and off just for ventilation sporadically, maybe don't do it every 6 months. But if the unit is tenanted and the machines are being used, yes, you're going to want to have an AC tech come in. It's not expensive to do the maintenance. The reason I put that price range in there, the mini split maintenance will run you around 800,000 pesos, so not very expensive per wall unit. Okay. Now, in one of the, again, rare in Playa, but I would say it's a 95% mini splits. I would say maybe 93% mini splits. We're going to have another 3% of buildings that have this fan and coil type systems. And I'm not a tech, but what I've learned about these fan and coil systems, on the outside, it looks like it's central AC, so it's cleaner on the outside, but in reality, they do have this compressor it's a different system, my friends. Now, these systems, they are more expensive and they are more expensive to maintain. So your maintenance, instead of it being, 50 per unit, is going to run you around 150 pesos per unit to do proper maintenance on the system. And I want to tell you guys that if you are in a building that has fan and coil AC, make sure that the technician that you're calling is actually familiar with this type of unit. Many of them are not going to be. Because again, one of the units that I manage happens to have this type of AC. I do have a good person, a good company. They're actually Cancun based, but they service all over the Riviera Maya. make sure you're dealing with a company that knows how to do proper maintenance on these units, because other technicians, they will just come and do the inside unit, but not also clean the compressor, and that could lead to problems in the future. Okay. When it comes to the central ACs, again, I only am aware of one building in Playa where I handle some rentals in there, and there too you should be doing maintenance every 6 months, and it's probably going to be a bit more expensive. I know central AC and fan and coil will be more expensive to maintain versus regular ACs. I don't really know what the plus side is. Maybe the lifespan is longer. I really don't know why some buildings chose to install those. It does look cleaner. You don't have the mini splits on the walls. Maybe that aesthetically they look better, both fan and coil and central ACs. But yeah, keep in mind regarding your air conditioning units. Let's talk about the next thing that you're gonna have in your units, and those are boilers. The majority of new condo buildings in Playa are going to be fully electric. So what we have to the left is a picture of an electric boiler, just a sample electric boiler, whereas the one in the middle is a gas-based boiler. Boilers also require maintenance every 6 to 12 months, and I'll get more into that. But the reason you are going to need to get maintenance done is because in this area we have hard water. The water here is full of minerals, mostly calcium, and those calcium and other mineral deposits will clog up your machine. I'm going to show you on the next slide what happens. Okay. And doing maintenance on your machine will just expand its lifespan. Now, I don't know technically how long a boiler is supposed to live. I haven't. I should have googled that, but they're not as expensive to replace as ACs are. And the estimate I'm giving you here is including labor. I haven't had to do it yet on one of my units. We're doing maintenance, and I would definitely recommend, if you're a property owner, make sure you do maintenance on the boiler. Again, I find a lot of foreign owners have no idea about both the humidity and this hard water situation, and why you need to maintain your equipment, your appliances. Okay, so look what happens, my friends. So this is actually these are before and after pictures of the inside of a boiler. Or at least this part. I'm not any kind of technical person, but the white that you see in the left pictures, this is the calcium buildup, and then on the right we see what the part looks like after it's been cleaned by the technician. Okay. Now, some buildings will install, the smart property owners and HOAs, homeowners associations, will install a softening system at the level of the building. There are a handful of buildings in Playa that have installed them, but it's not the rule. So most buildings will not have that. If a building already has a water softening system installed, then you don't need to clean the boiler every 6 months. You can clean it every year. Okay. And again, I do have contacts for technicians if any of you are in Playa and need this kind of help. Okay. And now I remember one owner telling me, and he showed me that he had installed this device where and I wish I knew the company name, but I'm sure you guys could look into it. A device that through ultrasound would break off the calcium particles or the mineral deposits so that they were not as thick. Very interesting. So this was installed at the level of the unit in the basement of the building, where the water, I want to call it toma de agua, that's what we call it in Spanish, where the water pipe coming into his unit was, he installed this device on the water pipe, and apparently it helped to soften the water going into his unit. Okay. Other than that, if you don't have any kind of water softening system, expect that your faucets, including your shower head, they're going to get filled up with these deposits. Now, don't ask me what happens to the pipes. I'm sure they get filled up with deposits too in time, up to a certain extent. Okay. But you can only do what you can do. Again, if you can install a water softening system, I think that's a good idea. Okay. With that said, again, the shower heads, what most of us do is we just clean them with vinegar. Same thing with your faucets. They're going to get clogged up every few months. You're going to want to dip it in vinegar, and that eliminates the deposit. It's funny that we have to do that, but it's just a small inconvenience in living by the beach. Okay. Other property management considerations. Oh yeah, with regards to to the gas boilers. Gas boilers, you're going to find them in older style buildings. So as of a number of years ago, by law, they don't build, well, I'm not sure if it's by law or because they're trying to control emissions, but you're not going to find gas boilers in the newer buildings, but you're going to find them in homes, in like individual standalone houses. You're going to find them in older condos that still have gas boilers. Gas is cheaper than electricity to run, so technically, but now we have on-demand boilers as well, same as in Canada, for example, where they're going to be more energy efficient because they're not on all the time, okay, in terms of the electric boilers. But gas boilers, same thing. You still have to clean them up every 6 to 12 months, okay? Okay. And when it comes to floors, okay, that's a very beautiful picture, some fancy floors. Most of the buildings in Playa are going to have tile floors. Some are going to have marble floors. I'm not going to get into the maintenance for marble floors, but what I have seen happen in some developments and some buildings, mind you, not the highest end buildings. These are, I would say, mid-range type buildings, or more what they would call like locals neighborhoods. The floors, if they were not properly installed due to the humidity, they will start lifting up. Okay, again, it's not very common. I think it has to do with how they were installed. So hopefully that doesn't happen to you. I have seen it happen. And again, what I talk about here, water pumps. If you're living in a house or an older condo building, you're going to have a water pump. Every so often they stop working. They're not expensive to replace. I put it in there, 50 to 100 USD. Not really a consideration, but something that you may need to keep in mind. Okay. But yeah, hopefully, there is one development in particular that I know has a problem with the tiles, and a lot of the owners, even though it's a relatively new development, a few years old, the original owners, most of them have had to replace their tiles because they all ended up lifting. And it's from a solid developer, but that particular subdivision in that development, I don't want to name it, but if you want, you can reach out to me and I'll tell you which one it is. They've had to replace all the tiles. But interestingly enough, other subdivisions in the same development didn't have that problem. So I think it has to do with how how the tiles were installed. And even one of my neighbors recently was telling me that, well, I was hearing noise and I'm like, are you, oh, it looks like you're renovating your property. And she goes, not willingly. It turns out that she had the same issue. The tiles started lifting up, and she was forced to renovate. Okay. Anyway, hopefully it won't happen to you. If you're buying in a higher end building, I don't think you're going to have these kinds of problems. Okay. Okay. Let's talk about types of property management. A lot of you that are watching these videos are out of town owners, or would be out of town owners, possibly investors. And even for those of you who are going to be personally occupying the unit, in case if it's not year round, then you may want to consider perhaps renting your property when you're not in town. If you're not going to be renting it, well, I've already told you about the remote control AC device. That's super important to get. But to the extent that you're going to want to rent your property, there are two types of property management, and there are some companies that offer both models. Okay, I myself have started helping some clients with property management only in Playa del Carmen for now, my friends, because I live here full time. So I'm happy to help with that. Okay, I currently only help my clients with medium to long-term rentals. So if you have a condo or a house anywhere in Playa del Carmen, this is what I can help you with. Okay, and again, there are some companies. I'm not the only game in town for sure. There are many other companies. How it works with medium to long-term rentals, there is a fixed monthly fee charged for the property manager to make sure all your bills are paid. Okay, that's your internet, your water, your electricity. Because even if a property is vacant, and especially if it's rented, we can talk about that. I could do more. I could have gotten more details here, but bottom line, the fixed monthly fee just takes care of actual property management. So if something gets broken in the unit and I need to send a plumber, or I need to send a technician, or anybody, that's somebody's investment of time. Somebody has to call the person. So I'm sure you guys get that. In addition to that, to the extent that the unit gets rented out, the standard rental commissions are the same as in Canada, the same as in the US. So if a tenant rents for a year, the property manager, the rental agent in this case, I'm acting as property management / rental agent in this case, the commission for the agent is 1 month of rent. So 1 year rent is 1 month of rent. That's the same as in Canada, my friends. How that works here is, in Canada and the US, clients are used to paying first and last. Here, we don't do first and last. We do 1 month of rent, 1 month of commission, 1 month of commission, 1 month of rent, 1 month of security deposit. And the security deposit is where the agent's commission comes from. Now, oftentimes, as I'm showing rental properties, a colleague may have a client that they bring, a rental client. In that case, it's still the same commission. It gets split into, again, works the same way in Canada. If it's a 6-month lease, it's half a month of rent. It's the agent's commission. In terms of the fixed monthly fee, I would say at the very least, you're looking at about 150 US a month. Even for small properties, I would say if it's just a studio unit, maybe a bit less than that. But I know some of the larger companies, for a 2-bedroom, they charge 220 US. And in addition to that, their rental commissions, okay? Now, depending on the type of unit you have, or if your intention is to personally occupy the unit, so you can't really rent it out for 6 to 12 months out of the year, then you may want to consider short-term rentals. It works the same way. There's a fixed monthly fee that gets charged strictly for property management issues. And then for in terms of the short-term rental commissions, they are anywhere from 20 to 30%. The larger companies will charge closer to 30%. The standard is 20%, okay? And what's considered a short-term rental, you may say it could be daily rentals, or it could be rentals of 3 months or less. In the marketplace, even we often have clients that only want to rent for 1 to 2 to 3 months. Some of the digital nomads that are coming on a medium or short to medium term basis. In those cases, my colleagues expect, if I have such a rental available, my colleagues would expect to get paid at least 10%. So the minimum is 20%. Of course, what happens in those cases, you charge a higher rate on a monthly and short-term rental basis versus a long-term rental rate, okay? And it all adds up in the end. It's just different ways of doing it. Obviously, some properties, especially if you're closer to Fifth Avenue, you're closer to the touristy part of Playa, some properties would be more geared towards short to medium-term rentals, versus some properties are better suited to long-term rentals. So properties on the non-beach side of the highway, further from Central, they tend to appeal more to families, people living here full-time, okay? So I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to cover. I think that's about it, my friends. Thank you for watching. I'm trying to think, is there anything else? I think that's about it, okay? I told you this wasn't going to be a long one, but I wanted to cover the essentials and just give you a bit of an idea of the things you need to watch out for, and also in terms of your property management, what are your options? Oh yeah, there is one more thing I wanted to mention. I personally do not handle daily and nightly rentals at the moment. I am looking into it. I have recently teamed up with a company that does Airbnb cleaning. They have a whole team. So from that perspective, all is fine. There is something that has prevented me. So what ended up happening is that in the last year, the government, the municipality here has decided to implement licensing for Airbnbs and short-term rentals. And I haven't looked into the details of that yet. So I'd like to look into the details before I take that on. I don't want to get my clients into any kind of situation because I have been informed that, well, by one of the buildings in which I manage one of the units, which is currently rented on a 1-year basis, the building manager has informed us that, city workers are starting to do unannounced visits. And I was like, okay, we're not going the way of Miami and Toronto yet. I don't think so. But, and I don't think the license is too expensive. I'm going to look into it, and maybe I'll do a video about the whole Airbnb licensing for people who are interested in doing short-term vacational rentals in this area. Okay, my friends. In the meantime, again, if you have a property in Playa and you're looking for, you're okay to do medium to long-term rentals, I'm happy to speak to you about that. And even if you're just not even wanting to rent it, but you need somebody to help you with all your bill payments, ventilation, things like that, I do have somebody that can help me with that as well. Okay, so thanks, mis amigos. That's my contact info, and see you soon. Okay, how do I stop sharing? Where am I? Yeah, bye, mis amigos. Thanks so much for tuning in. See you soon. I do want to get back on here, so I have a new video editor that's going to be helping me put my videos together. I have a backlog of videos that I haven't uploaded, so bear with me and stay tuned, especially if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe and like, okay? That helps, okay? Thank you, mis amigos. Have a beautiful rest of your summer. See you soon. Blessings.